Hey everyone, I'm Morgan from ShoreRivers, and this is a training video on our SAV Watcher program. Monitoring beds of submerged aquatic vegetation is vital to our work protecting and restoring these eastern shore waterways. The first step in the SAV Watcher program is deciding when you're going to go out to your site. So as a general rule, we require twice per season, and the season lasts from April to October. But you're encouraged to go out more if you can. Other things that matter are, one, tide. So you want to go at low tide or near low tide, and definitely avoid high tide. It's just easier for identification of the species and the site surrounding. However, if your site is unnavigable at low tide, then you could go around those middle tides, but again, try to avoid high tide. The second thing is we want to avoid going out 24 hours after rain. The rain will cause sediment mix-up, and it makes it harder for site identification and species identification. Before we get out on the water, we want to double check that we have everything that we need. So first, paddling vessel, make sure you have your life jacket, and then everything in your SAV kit that you'll get from your ShoreRivers office. So you have this big dry bag that we keep all these things in. You'll have your Secchi disc, your identification guide. Make sure that you have your phone to take pictures and coordinates while you're out there, and we provide a dry bag for your phone to keep that safe. You have a little rake for when you're trying to scoop up SAV for identification. And then finally, you'll have a pen and your data sheet. Now that we're sure that we have everything, we're ready to head out and start monitoring. All right, so you've made it out to your bed that you're scouting. You see SAV, and you are gonna first note the time. We note time in military or 24-hour time. Right now it's the morning, it's 11:17, so that's what I'll record. Next thing that you want to do is get coordinates around your bed, and you can do that using your phone.
A quick and easy way to get those coordinates on your phone when you're out in the field is to open a map like Google Maps. And if you aren't centered to where you are, you can click on this little arrow and it will take you to where you are. Otherwise, you can zoom in to where you know you are, hold down a pin, and then this is your coordinates. You can copy those down on your data sheet, and we just want to make sure that we have at least 6 decimal places.
So now to get our Secchi deck, we're going to use our Secchi disc. And what you do with this is you will lower your Secchi disc over your SAV bed until you can no longer see the black and white patches of the disc. And you want to do this without your sunglasses on. So I will lower my disc until I can no longer see it. I'll pinch the rope right where it touches the water, pull it up, and some ropes will have 1 foot markings and some will have 10 centimeter markings. This one is a foot marking, so at this, our Secchi depth is about 1.3 feet. And then we can also use our Secchi disc to measure total depth. So I can lower my Secchi disc all the way to the bottom, stop when I feel my disc just touch the bottom, pinch the rope again, pull it up, and use that to measure my total depth. So now we've got total depth at about 2 1/3 feet. While you're out here scouting your SAV bed, you'll also want to make sure you get the sediment type. So what we can do is use our paddle to get that. Stick your paddle vertically down and touch the bottom. So you can do this just outside your SAV bed, or if there's a patch in your SAV bed. And if you sink pretty deep in, you're likely in mud. If you feel some soft, you can get in there a little bit, but not sink straight down. You're likely in sand. And then we've also got an option for peat, which would be more likely to happen or be the case if you're in a marsh. That's like organic material, dense organic material. And then finally, if you put your paddle down and you feel just hard, it's likely rock. A way that you can double check your sediment type is to do a scoop of the bottom sediment and bring it up. And so I got a little here. Sometimes it's tough with fast moving water, but you can see then what your bottom type is. This is sandy. I can feel it. I can see it. So that's just a good double check if you can't tell by feel. We also want to make sure that we get our shoreline type recorded. And that is important because that's the growing environment around the SAV, and it can also pose some impacts to the SAV growth. So some options are riprap, like those rocks we see along the shoreline. That's what we have here. We also have bulkheads, beach, marsh. But one thing we want to make sure that we record with our shoreline is whether we see erosion at our shoreline. So that could look like trees falling over and also banks falling in, but just normal sandy beach wouldn't be designated as erosion. As you're scouting your bed, you'll want to be keeping an eye out for whether you see human impact. Some examples of that would be propeller lines through our SAV, or a line that's gone through where you can see a motor has maybe ripped out a section in a line of SAV. Other options are if you are scouting your bed and you see boats rafted up in the bed, people hanging out around the bed, or even docks. So for this, at this site that we're at, we have a dock right behind us with boat movement. So we would designate this area as human impact or potential to have human impact. So when you're out here on your bed, we're going to get to the point where we actually ID our species. So to make that really simple, we're going to use this handy dandy rake. Most of them extend in your kits. And you can go down, scoop along the bottom, and pull up some SAV. And you can actually take this out of the water. It's okay if you deroot it. We need it to be able to look. So here I've got my species of SAV. I'm going to take this out and move on to the identification process. So once you've got your first species, you want to immediately go ahead and identify it. There's going to be possibly multiple species in your bed, and you'll want to make sure that you do this process for each species, every species in the bed. So first, I will look through my booklet, identify what species I've got. I know that this is redhead, so I pull up to the redhead page, compare it. I know that this is that. There is a white sheet on the back of the front cover of your booklet that works great for taking the background of pictures. So at this point, I'll snap 2 pictures, 1 to 2 pictures of my species. So we'll also want to check for epiphytes and whether there's flowers and seeds present on our SAV. On this one, we do have a seed pod on the top, and you can double check your ID using that. And then the way that we can look for epiphytes is you can run your fingers through the leaves, and if you have a lot of organic material on your fingers, that's likely sediment that's hooked onto that, those epiphytes, that little algae. And also you can often see it in the water on top of the leaves, but something that looks other than just the plain SAV itself. All right, so a second species that we found out here is horned pondweed. So again, I'll use my ID book to identify that. Again, looking at this, we will look for seeds. So you want to look at your thing in your book and see what types of seeds they would look like. These ones are tiny little horn seeds. So we do have some of that on here. They're really small, so you won't be able to see it in this picture, but look at the seeds in the book, see if your SAV has any of those seeds or flowers present. And then again, you can run your fingers through. If you see much organic matter, then we have epiphytes. If not, then we don't. This, I don't really see much epiphyte activity going on. We did find a third species out here, and this is coontail. It's not in your booklet, but it might look like something in your booklet. It might not. So a good rule of thumb for these is when you're not quite sure, go ahead and take pictures and send it to the SAV coordinator or your local river keeper, and they can help you ID the species. So last thing I want to do is make sure that we get our density measurement. And this I like to save for last because you kind of need to know the whole bed that you're scouting to be able to make the density measurement. So it can be nice to wait till the end after you've paddled around, seen the SAV, seen where you have patches, and that can be helpful for your density determination. So on this bed specifically, we've got very dense SAV, little to no patches of bottom sediment between our SAV species and our groups of SAV. So we would call this a 4, which is the highest level of 70 to 100%. On the opposite end of the scale, you could have a 1, which is less than 10%, and that's like very scattered SAV, not really clusters. You just see some SAV around. And then we have designations of 2 and 3 in between. So if it's like a little more than 10%, that would be around a 2. And then if it's a pretty dense bed, but there are some gaps, then we would label that as more of like a 3. So this is pretty judgment based, but you can do it based on those 4 and 1 distinguishers that are more concrete. One last thing I want to point out is that you might go out to a site that you are routinely monitoring that had SAV a bit ago and now it doesn't. We still want to keep that information. So you'll fill out your form very simply as total SAV 0, which means absent. All right, everybody, that's a wrap. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for being an SAV watcher, part of our program that's so vital to our work and our mission. couple things I want to remind you of. You are encouraged to go out more than twice per season if you can. More data is great for us, our work, what we can do with it. And finally, make sure to keep submitting your data sheets and your pictures throughout the season. Again, even if you visit those sites, they don't have any SAV, mark that 0 and still send that in to us. We use that information. And finally, have fun. Thank you.